A serial killer, psychopath and pathological liar. Joanna Dennehy described herself as a monster with a Moorish taste for blood. When earlier this year Dennehy was given a whole life sentence, she joined the ranks of Rosemary West and Myra Hindley as one of Britain's most infamous female murderers. Matthew's story of how she was caught contains some strong language.
It was like a river of blood.
She just kept coming for me.
The most dangerous of people, you can't predict what they're going to do.
The story of Joanna Dennehy, the serial killer, is a dark and deeply disturbing one. It begins with a missing man and ends with 3 dead, their bodies dumped in ditches, and 2 others fighting for their lives.
But how did this mother of 2 become a cold-blooded killer who murdered men for fun? Dennehy grew up in Hertfordshire with her parents and younger sister. Her childhood seems to have been comfortable and ordinary. But in a twisted fantasy, she claimed she'd been abused as a child and even that she'd killed her father.
She is obsessed, fascinated by the ability one human has to actually snuff out the life of another.
But she wouldn't be satisfied with just the fantasy of murder. On Friday the 29th of March last year, Peterborough landlord Kevin Lee went missing. He was a 48-year-old husband with 2 children. Within hours of his family contacting the police, a car was discovered on fire. Checks quickly revealed it was his.
His car, found as it was ablaze, he not with it, was a particular interest to me, that there was obviously something underlying that that was stopping him from being in contact with his family. That raised the level of suspicion that I was dealing with more than the missing person inquiry.
Their worst fears were soon realised. The body of Kevin Lee was found in a ditch. He'd been repeatedly stabbed in the chest, including through the heart. In a final act of humiliation, he was wearing a black sequin dress pulled up above his waist. The missing person case was now a murder investigation.
You're standing literally in the middle of a field. You realise you've got no CCTV, you've got no witnesses. It was evident to me that the answer would be around the people in Kevin's life, and Joanna Dennehy was one of them. There was a suspicion that Kevin was having more than a friendly relationship with Joanna.
Dennehy lived in a shared house in Peterborough, owned by Kevin. She seemed to have a power and influence over some men. They would become obsessed and fascinated by her. Police decided to bring her in for questioning.
It was very evident very quickly that she was making herself very, very hard to find.
And she wasn't alone. Detectives linked her to longtime friend, 7'3" tall Gary Stretch.
It was clear to me that Dennehy and Stretch were involved in Kevin's death. And it was at that point that I took the difficult decision to put both their photographs into the media. Dennehy and Stretch together were a particularly dangerous combination.
The pair got a thrill from their status, bragging they were like Bonnie and Clyde.
Take a picture for me.
They took these pictures while on the run. Officers from forces across the UK were now looking for them, and the police were about to get a major breakthrough.
A detective in Norfolk was reviewing a theft at a petrol station and gave me that critical missing link, the registration number of a green Vauxhall Astra. Well, that was the absolute golden nugget.
The car was traced to Hereford, 140 miles away, an area Stretch had links with. But by now, Dennehy had formed a sick plan.
I want my fun.
This time, to murder at random.
I felt a thump in the back of my shoulder. So just turned around, and there was this girl. She said, I want to hurt you. I want to fucking kill you. Kicked her. At least twice. Punched her. Made no effect. She just kept coming.
Dennehy left him for dead, but she hadn't satisfied her lust for blood. Within 20 minutes, she struck again. This time, the attack was even more savage.
I mean, the first thought I can remember was, well, this is it, you know, this is the day that I die. I mean, I just couldn't believe that I would survive, because there was just, it was like a river of blood.
She was now taking more risks, attacking in broad daylight. But with multiple 999 calls reporting what she'd done, the police were closing in.
At the very least in Cambridgeshire, we could show an association between Kevin and Joanna. And this was completely off the scale.
Just 19 minutes after John Rogers was stabbed, police had caught Dennehy.
She was arrested by officers in Hereford, was completely calm, offered no resistance, and even offered them the knife that she had carried out the attack with.
Stretch wasn't in the car, but he was arrested within an hour. She was charged with 1 murder and the 2 attempted murders.
Attempted and murder. Attempted murder and murder. Good work. I'm a big fat black robin.
She's facing an inevitable fate. The cavalier, defiant behaviour that we see in the footage is a desperate last attempt to avoid the consequences, not to have to face up to that.
But there were further horrors to come. 2 more bodies were found, not far from Kevin Lee's.
The sense of shock that went through the incident room when I relayed that to my team was palpable. And it was, I guess, that critical moment where we all realised that we were dealing with something extraordinary now.
Łukasz Slabozewski would turn out to have been Dennehy's first victim. Originally from Poland, the 31-year-old had only known her for a few days. He was stabbed once through the heart. The second body in the ditch, and also Dennehy's second victim, was 56-year-old John Chapman. He was murdered at the house he shared with her. She stabbed him once in the neck and 5 times in the chest, including again through the heart.
She moves on from a simple, straightforward murder style to one which is much more frenzied. She's less focused on the ultimate destruction of the individual. She's done that, she's experienced that, and she's liberated now to express her full sadistic desires.
Only Dennehy knows exactly why she killed. During 14 hours of police interviews, she refused to cooperate.
Did you murder Łukasz Slabozewski?
No comment.
Did you murder Kevin Lee?
No comment.
Did you murder John Chapman?
No comment.
But while awaiting trial, she surprised everyone, including her own legal team, by pleading guilty. At the Old Bailey, she laughed, joked and swore in court as she became only the 3rd woman to be given a whole life term.
She's in company of Hindley and West as female serial killers. The nature of her crimes are very different, but just as shocking.
She's the only female serial killer I can think of other than Rose West, who has committed the crimes purely for their own sake, for their own sadistic thrill.
Actually, what you've got is probably the most dangerous of people. You can't predict what they're going to do. And it's absolutely right that she will die in prison.
It's a staggering situation. There's the why. Was any more understood about the why?
No, we don't, partly because of that late guilty plea. Her sister said it was all about Dennehy trying to control the trial situation. We know she had a pretty normal childhood, doting parents, doing well at school, but by 15 she was beginning to go off the rails. Drink, skunk cannabis, she left home, but nothing that fully explains that descent into chaos. I mean, by the end, she certainly loved the notoriety. She's said to have danced around the television when she saw herself in news reports. I spoke to one criminologist who suggested perhaps once the spotlight faded, she'd offer up some sort of explanation, because rather like in the way of the Moors murderer, to keep the focus on here, Ian Brady, control is everything, and the why is the one thing they control.
Just briefly, psychologists, the police, did they say she would have gone on killing?
Oh, undoubtedly. They think the number of attacks would have increased, also the level of violence would have increased. Once she crossed that line, all she wanted to do was kill. There are only two positive. One, the police caught her so quickly. The other is that Joanna Dennehy will spend every day of the rest of her life in a prison cell.
Matthew, thank you. Let's go to Martin now.